I'll click it now so I don't forget. Hi Laura.
Hi, you all right?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Hectic day, very hectic day.
Well, welcome to this oasis of calm. We know exactly what's going on here. There's no worries here. Yeah, so like I was just saying to Scott, if you could do an initial introduction of Scott, and then Scott can do his thing and talk about himself and the topic, and then we'll encourage people to, introduce him, let people know that the session's going to get recorded now, just so that they're aware, and then let people, encourage people to introduce themselves in the chat and let them know that there's the Q&A box where they can ask questions.
Yeah, lovely. What I've done is I've watched one of Callum's introductions and pretty much noted everything he said.
Oh, cool.
As long as he's been doing it right, then I'm sure I will.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Good. I wasn't sure if you've done one of these yet. I don't think, well, you haven't done one with me. You might have done one with Rosie. I'm not sure. But yeah, so yeah, if you've done that, that's great. Just do that. And then towards the end, if there's questions there, one of the ways it seems to be working quite nice is if you then pop back up again. Because if you turn your camera off when you're not talking, people don't have to sit and watch you listen to Scott then. And so yeah, if you pop back up, then the question and answer bit, it's a bit more like a conversation, so you can read out people's questions for them. So
lovely. Which coffee shop will you be in on?
Table 1.
Table 1.
And I can post a link in the chat as well later on if that's useful.
Lovely.
But yeah, that's it really.
Lovely.
Yeah. Very chill. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
If you think it's chill, then it's easier. You feel calmer.
Wait, is it not chill? Is it not chill?
It's definitely chill.
It is. It's just that I was naturally scared for my first one, so don't worry. It's actually really, really calm.
It's fine, I think. Most people are finding it fine.
My sort of take on it was like, it's Friday. People will be doing this for a week.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
If anyone comes, that's the main thing.
It's a supportive community anyway. Everyone's here to try and share and talk about different ideas. No one's trying to cut anyone down, so it's it's a nice space. Cool. I'm going to mute and disappear, and then click broadcast because we're at 2 minutes past, and then there's a little bit of filler time, Laura, where you can just keep saying hello while everyone comes in.
Hello everyone. Okay.
All right, cool. Have a good session.
Thank you. We got this. It's fine.
And you'll just see people trickle in.
Yeah. To be fair, I have nothing interesting to say, so. Yeah.
But that's comforting to hear, everyone trickling in.
No, it's gonna be great.
Hello everyone coming in. It's nice to see the number jumping up.
Hi, Anne.
For anyone coming in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. It's been really helpful in other conversations. People say like their role or the union they're in, and it just means people can have that conversation. If you have questions throughout, other people like to answer as well. It's exciting. We'll give it a minute or so.
Absolutely.
Work with Scott, who is amazing. Oh, that's nice to hear. My friend's actually going to Dundee in September.
Oh, amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah, I swear I never heard about Dundee before then. Now I see it like all the time pop up.
Oh, I know the feeling.
Lovely. I'll give it another second.
Yeah, there's no rush. 15, 20 minutes will be fine.
Ooh, that's a good reminder. Let me get rid of my Facebook app, otherwise you're going to get all the pings. Thank you everyone for introducing yourself in the chat. I think it's just really nice to see all the different types of unions and RAGs coming together to watch these sessions. Lovely, so I'll get started. If anyone then trickles in, then don't worry, this will be uploaded after, so you can always catch whatever I say. Hi everyone, welcome to this session, Community Culture, Embedding Giving Back into an SU. Proudly presented to you by the National Student Fundraising Association. My name is Laura Carlin. Hi, I'm part of the NASFA committee and I am your host today. So just to confirm that we will be recording this session, you'll see the little record bit in the top left corner. If you are not comfortable being recorded, you can leave, and we are recording this obviously, and we will be sharing it once the session's all over and the festival's over. But I'm absolutely thrilled today to introduce you to Scott Quinn. Give him a wave. Hi. Who is the president at Dundee's University Student Association. As we have been throughout the week, if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, please feel free to use this chat function as you want. Ask each other questions, make comments about the presentation. If you do have actual questions you want to ask Scott, feel free to use, there is a little Q&A section. If the questions are relevant to the slides, Scott, if you're happy, I can ask you those questions going through. Otherwise, there is an extended session just at the end for the Q&A. But that is all from me, and I will hand over to Scott.
Fab. Thanks so much for having me. So thanks for joining today, everyone. It's really great to see so many organisations kind of come together under these circumstances. And thank you to Organise Fund for putting something like this on. It's just fantastic. So for those of you that haven't had a chance to read the session bio, this is Community Culture, Embedding Giving Back into an SU. This is aimed at new or returning Sabbs, or anyone really. And it's just to give you a whistle-stop tour of what RAG actually is, how sabbatical officers can support one at their university, but we'll touch more on that in a bit. So in theory, this will move. There we go, fab. So as Laura kind of said, use the chat, ask your questions. We'll finish the session at the scheduled time, probably a bit before, and then we can just have a bit of a chat and a wee Q&A, which sounds lovely. It says here the session isn't being recorded, but it is, so good luck with that. I'm also happy to send on any slides if anyone's interested. So a little bit about me then, just ignore the picture. I was kind of forced to put it in. So I'm the president of Dundee University Students Association, and I've just finished my English and Film degree, finally. At our uni, I chaired the RAG committee for 2 years, and as part of that, it's offered me a good perspective on the relationship between how RAG works as a whole, but also in relation to the Students' Union at each sort of university. So that's why I'm kind of talking to you today. There we go. So as I said, this session is all about how Sabbs can start up a RAG to embed that community culture on campus and within their Students' Union. So we'll cover that, how you can work to grow your current RAG if you have one, some tips and advice to start one, and then there's also the opportunity to ask any questions that you have. But before all that, I'm going to give you a very brief whistle-stop tour of what RAG actually is, and a very quick history just to kind of provide some context to why we're all here today. So the whole purpose of RAG, or Raising and Giving, is to get students involved in raising money for good causes, locally, nationally and internationally. If you take a look through some of the fundraising seminars at the conference, you'll see that a lot of them are coming from different unis around the UK, which is really fantastic to see. A large number of unis actually have some form of RAG campaign, and some of those actually date back to the late 1800s. As the bottom point says there, it can take the form of a student society or an SU run campaign. There is no real guidebook on how to do it. It's just very much how it meets your needs as a university and as a students association. There we go. So originally, way back when, RAG started out as the infamous RAG Week, which, as you can kind of guess, is a week dedicated to students fundraising for charity. Over the years, this grew and the events got bigger and bigger, with some cities even having like the big American style parades where people would decorate floats and people would come and watch and donate money, and it's just quite a big thing. And then over time, this kind of grew to become a year-round fundraising model, and the amounts obviously continued to increase because of that. Students could tap into like holiday events or even Freshers Week and just allow it to grow. And then a majority of the students' unions are at that stage where the RAG committee are actually fundraising year-round, but still many have that RAG Week as a highlight in their annual calendars. So as that third point kind of alludes to, a key part of RAG today kind of centres around that sort of challenge-based fundraising, which you'll hear quite a lot about at the festival. So these are the challenges that will see students do something incredible to raise money for charity. Really popular ones include like climbing Kilimanjaro, the Three Peaks Challenge, and it can vary from skydives to marathons to pretty much anything. And it's really great to see the sort of charities and the external companies that help put these challenges on sort of come together to support students like through something like that. And they can have fundraising targets from anything from between £50 to 3,000. You can quickly see how much that sort of money really adds up and the differences it really makes overall. So that's like a very whistle-stop tour of what RAG actually is. If you're interested in finding out more, it's worth giving it a search online. And once things calm down a bit, try and see if your university archives will let you take a look at anything they might have on the history of RAG at your uni. The important thing to take away from this is that, again, that there's no real rules to what RAG can actually look like, and it's very much what you want it to be more than anything else. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to chat about in regards to starting and growing a RAG is going to be in the context of the RAG at Dundee. It gives just a physical example to put everything into context, but the general point can definitely be applied anywhere if you want to take it away. So with RAGs having that long history, Dundee was very much one of those as well. There are things in like the university archives going back to like the early 1900s, and you can really see it at the different stages in time as well. So quite a lot of RAGs used to make magazines to like sell and raise money, and it's fascinating that you can see them at different points in history as well. So like even back in World War II, when they were like being sold to raise money for like the war effort and things, it's just really fascinating. So it's kind of part of that. Dundee RAG kind of died out in the late 2000s and kind of came back about 5 or 6 years later. But this time it was kind of fundraising throughout the year. And then over the years, it's kind of grew to the point where it needed a dedicated like non-sabbatical officer to kind of oversee it all. And then following on from that, we introduced challenges in our portfolio in 2019. So that's the kind of context that we're sitting at. And then we're going to focus on how the exec kind of brought it back. And then hopefully you guys can sort of learn from that. So my first point, and I can't really stress this enough, is that people, especially sabbatical officers, are really busy already. So it's kind of thinking about how something like this can be implemented without increasing someone's workloads even more when they're already probably working at full capacity. So when sabbaticals at Dundee wanted to try and bring it back together, they wanted to, obviously implement it, but figure out what they actually wanted it to look like and how they could make it work with the limited resources that they actually had. So like we knew we wanted it to be a charity that was chosen by students, but rather than making it own election to actually choose that charity, we actually implemented it as part of the student council elections that happen every September. This meant that we could have an almost guaranteed level of engagement because it ties into the already established awareness of like the student council, the elections that happen then, and that sort of thing. And B, we could do it without all the costs that running an election would bring. So for our sort of circumstances, this made the most sense. And so with that in mind, we have our charity, but how do we actually get to the actual fundraising part of it? It's also great to come up with new events, and that's a brilliant way to sort of spread awareness of what you're trying to do with RAG. But it's also worth looking at what you do already and where RAG can work alongside the work and campaigns that reappear sort of year on year. There we go. So here we've got a couple of examples of where RAG has been able to be included as part of pastoral campaigns, but in slightly different ways up in Dundee. So if we go for the one on the left, International Women's Day campaign first. This is obviously a really important message and a day that we really wanted to mark and celebrate as an executive team. It just so happens that that year, the RAG charity that we elected was the Dundee International Women's Centre. So we felt like there was a good opportunity to sort of line up those two in a way. A key event in that was the Voices and Visions of Women event, where we had speeches and presentations from like amazing women from around the university, and then we sort of followed that on with a series of short films from like women creators. So all in all, it was like a really solid event. And then because obviously the charity was the Dundee International Women's Centre, we wanted to tie those up, but we didn't feel it was right to charge a cost to attend the event, just in the context of what it was for, what it was marking, and that sort of thing. So we kind of thought about a happy medium would be to have sort of donation buckets placed around the venue, and then have speakers to encourage donations if people wanted to and were able to. All in all, it's like just sort of about building that relationship between the sort of pastoral events and RAG itself. It doesn't necessarily need to be a fundraising event as the main cause to have that event, but it's great to sort of be able to tie the fundraising into that as sort of like bilateral. And then the second example I kind of wanted to chat about was our winter market event. So this was an event that existed prior to the exec implementing the RAG campaign. And it essentially exists to give students a fun experience, but also gives any creatives, so that's either students or businesses, the opportunity to come in and sell anything they've made, which is obviously really nice. It's an exec-led event, and as part of that, stall holders have always been charged a small fee to reserve a stall on the day. Just to sell the goods, but it's standard practice in most markets, just essentially to try and encourage people to actually show up if they've made a booking. And then those funds were used by the Students' Union to sort of cover the costs, and then any profits would just generally be reabsorbed back into the organisation. So once the team sort of decided that they wanted to make it a RAG event, the actual concept of the event stayed the same, but those fees, rather than just being absorbed back into the SU, then went straight to RAG. And it was a great way to sort of combine the two, which was fantastic. And then because that's happened, it just became sort of annual practice as it kind of went on. And then it's just sort of built year on year on year, which again is like really inspiring to see. So over that time, the way of thinking really embeds RAG into like the way the student executive work. So it becomes almost standard practice that RAG is involved in some way or another. So for Dundee, this combined with the Vice President of Student Activities, our sort of like societies officer, running a few new events meant that RAG really had a substance and really developed an annual calendar that it stuck to year on year. But then also on sort of like the flip side of that, over the span of those years, the workloads involved with that also started to increase to the point where it wasn't really feasible to continue. So obviously wanting to keep RAG as a part of the Students' Union, they implemented a non-sabbatical position within the exec, whose remit was to sort of chair the RAG committee and allow for some proper time to be spent developing it. And then from that, we just sort of had a sort of snowball effect, which was really great. So because of that role, it could grow even more. We could implement bigger events and get more buy-in from students, which is a very big thing. We could implement a committee of student volunteers to help run and plan the events, obviously still supported by the sabbaticals to really give ownership of the campaign back to the students as well. And then because of all that work, as a result, we could really cement the argument to have sort of RAG support added to the job descriptions of permanent members of staff as those changes sort of came about, meaning that going forward, you can really maintain that same sort of level of like quality of work year on year. And then even more so, we felt like we were in a comfortable position to start offering challenges as a RAG, which again creates that sort of buzz and engagement with students, which of course means that you then see the many benefits of this, including raising a bunch of money for amazing causes, which really is the main reason that we do it more than anything else. So the main part of this session, I really wanted to be a Q&A and just have that sort of discussion. So that was like really important to me. Oh, that question, how much money did you raise in your first year? Fantastic. So the very first year that RAG was implemented, so that would have been 2014-ish, it would have been, honestly, it started off maybe like £1,000, £2,000, like it's not a massive amount of money, but obviously it's still very important because any amount that you raise is still really good. In my first year in office, we'd increased that to about 13 to 14,000. And then that's then increased the following year because we started implementing our challenges. So we're roughly around the 30k mark. And a lot of unis, they will sort of jump straight in and be able to raise that sort of like 100,000 plus in the first year, which is amazing. But for a lot of people, especially in Dundee, we wanted to really cement the groundwork that you could really build from that. So that was like really important to us. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, drop another message. Kind of on the back of that then, no worries at all. As I was saying, I kind of want this to be very much a Q&A based sort of session. So I'm just going to wrap up slightly here with a few kind of key points that I wanted to discuss. Hi, Laura.
We just have another question.
I'll go for it.
I'm taking out, yeah. So Charlie asked, was it difficult to get permanent staff on board? And what were some initial small scale events you ran?
Oh, fab. So I was actually going to cover the staff buy-in part of it. So it depends very much on the sort of staff roles. So for us, the pastoral staff, they were very much keen on supporting RAG. So the ones that work directly with the exec to support students, they were very much keen for it. They wanted to help support it as much as they could. For us, our sort of, not difficulty, but the biggest challenge was sort of around our events staff, the ones that sort of run the nightclubs, the bars, that sort of thing. So they have it very much down to an art form and how they actually run the nightclubs. Like, they're very proud of the work that they've done and the standard to be able to get it to. So they're a bit hesitant when people want to come in and make changes to it, which is fair enough. But one of the key examples for that was we wanted to implement a RAG event into our Freshers Week lineup, which was never really done before. So it was very much a first time we were having those conversations. And there was some hesitance, but it's all just about learning to speak the language that they speak more than anything else. So for context, the event we wanted to do was just like a big pub quiz. Great way for students to meet other people, and a great way, easy way to sort of make money for charity. So we managed to win them over, which was fantastic. We were expecting 50 to 100 people because it's part of the Freshers Week lineup. 300 people ended up attending, which was a big surprise. Honestly, I really look back on that event like really fondly because of just seeing all the bar staff, all the student exec running around trying to find extra chairs in the building, that sort of thing. Yeah, but honestly, because of that work and because we kind of built those relationships, we were then able to have those conversations a lot easier about how we can work together in the future. And it was just sort of about building up that trust between the two that's really important. And sorry, I believe there was a second question as well.
The second one submitted.
Oh, fab.
Is that the one you're on about, or of the same question?
The second part to that question, I believe.
So obviously it was was it difficult to get permanent staff on board? And then it said, what were some of the initial scale, sorry, I'll start again. What were some initial small scale events you ran?
Oh, fab. So in regards to my year personally, I spent a little bit of time just figuring out what other student unions were doing that maybe we could offer to our Dundee students. And also, as part of that, obviously, like most universities, there is a large number of societies, and they all have like their own events. They might have their own signature event, and it's just sort of finding that space where you wouldn't be stepping on anyone's toes, but you see there is a gap almost in the market, for lack of a better term, about an event that you can put on that would go down really well. So one of the sort of events that I'm honestly really proud of is we did a Drag for RAG event. Even if you go through I think it's the National Student Fundraising Association Facebook group, it's a great place to sort of just get feedback, bounce ideas off of people. It's fantastic. And drag was very much on the up, as it still is, with Drag Race becoming more popular. And we felt that there was a gap in the market in Dundee for something like that. The Students' Union wasn't really doing anything about to like meet that demand. So we did it, and it was a fantastic, great night. We got Dundee drag queens. It was very local. It's for a local charity, and there was just that sort of rallying around to kind of support the Dundee Food Bank, which was really inspiring. But honestly, if you just kind of take a look at the work that you're already doing in terms of like your pastoral campaigns. So one of the annual events that we do, it's relatively easy to put on, is sort of like, as part of Sex Week, they do a sex pub quiz and a sex banging bingo, which always goes down really well. It's something different. It's both informative, but it's also something funny. And it's little things like that that you can really sort of tweak as well. Hope that answers your question. If not, please let me know.
Lovely. There's another question that someone's also put their thumbs up. So are you happy to take this now?
Yeah, no, go for it, yeah.
Yes, it's an interesting one actually, saying, so Fiona said, what is the demographic of people who donate, and how much development are you doing with that beyond the university?
So in terms of the demographic of people that donate, obviously as a students association and RAG coming into under the fold of like the student executive, we very much feel that we want to apply to everyone. We want it to be a welcoming environment. We want it to appeal to all our students. And there's nothing really specifically targeted at certain demographics of students. We do try and keep it open as much as possible. And sort of like the collaborations with the student societies and things, there are a lot of societies based on like countries that people might originate from, languages they speak, that sort of thing. And when we sort of collaborate with them, it honestly adds a new perspective to sort of the events that we add. I think, well, I'm only one person, I'm Scottish, I come from Glasgow, I can only add so much for perspective. So it's really good to sort of take that chance to sort of listen, see what new ideas are out there, because there's tons, especially if you're talking to students that come to Scotland to study, and it's all just about that sort of building those relationships. Again, sorry, the second question has went completely out of my head.
It's all right.
Oh,
So
no.
how much development are you doing with that beyond the university?
Oh, in what way? Do you know if there's any more clarity to that question?
Very good question. Fiona, to add a bit more to that question for us. See, I was perceiving it like maybe community work, but I could have been perceiving it very wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm happy to chat about community work, and then Fiona, feel free to correct us. Happy to chat more. So a big part of the work we wanted to do was to sort of, in terms of the actual charities themselves, we wanted to make sure we were at least fundraising for one local charity throughout the year. So there was a lot of time where we did network with the local charities to make sure that they knew that they existed, that knew that we existed. So there's like a lot of areas. Sorry, they have like a third sector sort of networking organisation. So we reached out to them. We kind of met a couple of staff, and we kind of just made it aware that this is an annual process of like choosing a local charity. And up until I came into the office, it was very much just students could elect or nominate a charity they wanted to see us fundraise for. But we kind of felt that that put the local charities at a disadvantage, especially if they weren't great at networking with students, or they weren't great at either social media presence or engagement or awareness or something like that. So to kind of combat that, we opened up the opportunity to have them nominate themselves. And we made sure that the panel that was in charge of shortlisting was entirely made up of students, to try and make sure that student voice was still heard. And as part of that, the first year we trialled that, we had triple the number of nominations. So, and a lot of them came from charities themselves, which was really inspiring to see.
Mm.
And then I think on the flip side of that, if you choose to go down the route of including sort of challenges in your portfolio, you really do get that networking opportunity, but at a much larger scale, both like nationally and even internationally, depending on the charity you go with. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Fiona's added a bit more information. So the funds from students are limited, but how much do they go out and raise money from the community?
No, fantastic. Yeah, so we're very much keen on that. Obviously, funds are limited, like their students. They're known for being a bit strapped. No, absolutely. One thing that we're very much keen on is getting out into the community, because, as I said earlier, when we spent a lot of time going into like university archives and seeing how big RAG used to be, so like I mentioned the parades that used to happen, like those were big in Dundee as well, and just seeing it sort of fizzle out was quite depressing in a way, especially when you could like just see the engagement decrease with all the like the documents and the photos that you saw. So we're very much keen on getting out and about. There was two sort of avenues for that. One, we're very much keen on getting the charities into the university. So like if we were having events, we would invite reps along, give the opportunity to give speeches, that sort of thing. But on the flip side of that, as part of RAG Week this year, we were hoping to encourage people to try and get out and bucket, so like raise funds in the city centre, encourage people to dress up, just try and spread that general awareness in the actual community. But I think given the circumstances of everything that's happened, we had to kind of pull that back and just try and keep it to a bit minimal, which is quite sad, but it's one of the things that I've definitely passed over to my successor. So hopefully we can definitely do more work on that in the future. And that's definitely one of the attitudes that I've tried to take. It's very much, yes, as a non-sabbatical officer or sabbatical, you're in that role for a year and you really want to make as much impact as possible. As part of that, don't really be afraid to spend that time cementing the foundations that people who come after you can build on. Like, there's no shame in that, and it's a very important piece of work, and it's definitely worth thinking about. Hope that answers your question as well. So if there's no other questions at this point, I'm going to quickly jump back to the other points that I had. If we just get my notes back up, sorry. Fab. So just a couple of quick areas that I kind of wanted to chat about. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, so branding was a kind of a big one. When I first kind of came into post, despite RAG having been around for a few years by this point, there was no real clear branding for it. I really wanted to change that because I think it's important to have that sort of clear message from the outset. I think because a lot of student groups go by RAG, at one point you're almost distancing them from it just because they then have to ask, like, what does RAG mean? What do you do? Blah, 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 and that sort of thing. So it's important to try and have that clear message about what you're trying to say. So on that note, we kind of worked with a student to design the new RAG logo, which you can kind of see down in the bottom right there. And then that now appears on every RAG event graphics, regardless of whether it's run by the RAG committee or sabbatical officers or a society running the event on our behalf. That consistency really sort of builds awareness of the message that we're trying to get across as well, which is really important. Oh, is that a question for me, Laura?
In the chat we have, does anyone have a RAG policy in place?
Oh, fab.
I'm just asking what
RAG
policy. We do have a question in the Q&A, but I was going to wait until you've gone through these.
No worries at all.
Right.
I'm happy to chat about RAG policy under the document everything section, actually, funnily enough. But if I just quickly jump through this slide, then we can go on to questions fully. That sounds good. Fab. So yeah, just kind of back on the branding thing. Yeah, that consistency really builds that awareness of the message you're trying to get across. And then that kind of does tie in nicely to the staff and student buy-in section. So increasing the awareness of RAG really, sorry, let's just go on again, fun. Yeah, there we go. So increasing the awareness of RAG will obviously mean that there's a higher chance of students engaging with it. So for example, because of the work we were doing and promoting RAG, our clubs and societies really started to take note of what was actually happening, and they actually started to show their support. So it's kind of mentioned previously. Another example, in 2018/19, we raised money for the local food bank, and because of that a lot of our societies who were focused on like helping local community, ending food poverty, that sort of thing, they started to do a lot of work in promoting and attending our events themselves, because they did really believe in the cause, which is really inspiring to see as well. And then that's also kind of grown as more societies have started to notice the work that we're doing. They're actually going out and planning and running their own fundraising events and then donating the money to RAG, which was a bit of a surprise, but a welcome one. And then on the other side of that, once you've kind of, not once, but as well as getting the students on board, it's also important to get the student union staff on board. As I kind of said, you'll find that a lot of the pastoral staff who kind of help with the student support directly, they are very keen on supporting you as a non-sabbatical officer, as a sabbatical as well. And then in Dundee, sort of, not the challenges, but a lot more of the friction came from trying to work with the events team. But just being able to speak their language, like if it's in numbers, speaking numbers, if it's all about student support, speaking student support, just to try and win them over. And then you can really see that once you've done that, that it does go to new levels, which is always exciting. And then, as I mentioned, the pub quiz as well. That's kind of one of the winning stories that I've kind of taken away from that. Document everything. I'm happy to chat about policy at this point. Yeah, might as well. So, very much have a policy in place. If you do a quick Google, quite a lot of student unions will have theirs listed on the website or in Google Drive or something, and it's very easy to hunt down. It's very good because it sets those standards in everything you sort of do year on year. So there's that sort of consistency. So for example, in our policy, we have a very in-depth section on how to run a RAG election to choose the charity. So it's very much clear, the criteria that the charities need to meet to be nominated. It's clear that what should be taken into account when the student panel are reading applications. There's key dates in mind. There's networking advice and that sort of thing. So it's very extensive. And that takes you through how to recruit volunteers, how to recruit a committee, what to do if you need to get rid of the committee, just in case, worst case scenario, but it's always good to sort of have that written down so you know what to do. And then it's also good to just have very clear instructions on what is actually done with the money that's raised. So whether that's after an event, during an event, or even at the end of the year, and you have to transfer that lump sum to the event, to the charity, sorry. So it's all about how, sort of making sure that everything is quite extensive. But one thing you'll find is that no matter how extensive it is, there will always be something that's missing. There will always be something that you will say, I really wish that one sentence had a different comma or a different word, because it would really sort of make the situation completely different and your response to that. And then, as I said earlier, kind of just look for gaps in the sort of environment that you're kind of working in. So if your university, like societies, are doing a lot of pub quizzes, maybe do something a little bit different so you can stand out. One of the events that we do every year is the 55-hour radio marathon. No other societies or something do it. It's essentially, we partner with the student media outlets, so like the magazine, the radio, the website, the TV station, and then we all lock ourselves in the Students' Union for 55 hours over one weekend. And it's live streamed and people donate money, and it's just thinking outside of that box, because I think that can really make a whole difference. Thank you so much. And now we're kind of just fully on to the Q&A section. So if anyone has anything, please do let me know.
Yeah, we have one in the Q&A. Remember, guys, you've got some time, so please feel free to pop them in the Q&A section. But Ruth asks, do you engage many volunteers in your activities throughout the academic year through social projects or programs, or are they mainly working in raising funds?
So it's very difficult because there's a kind of a lot of key different areas to work with. So for instance, when we partnered with the Dundee Food Bank, a lot of the volunteers that we kind of worked with, they were very keen on actually volunteering with the food bank out with the university in their fundraising hours, which was really fantastic to see. There was no real you have to volunteer, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was very much off their own backs, which is quite inspiring. It's very much something that we're aware of, but we haven't really hit the nail on the head yet on how we can really fully use the sort of power of the student volunteers that we have. But I would definitely be keen to learn. So if you want to have a chat in the coffee shop after this, I'd love that. Yeah. Do you know if there's anything else?
I suppose we can wait for a moment and see if anybody pops anything in. Otherwise, guys, if you haven't seen before, we do pop over to the coffee shop after. Oh, I think it's just been popped in the chat. Lovely. We'll be on table 1. So if you have any specific questions you want to ask Scott, then you're more than welcome to in the coffee shop. Otherwise, we can wait a couple minutes and see if anyone pops anything in the Q&A section.
Oh.
How long has your RAG been going for?
Our RAG. So it was kind of brought back in roughly 2014, so 6 years. It dates a lot further back than that, but it did kind of die out for about 7 or 8 years. So it was essentially starting it from scratch. So it's relatively new in the grand scheme of things.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's strange how quickly the years go by.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because you see people that have volunteered with their first year and then they'll still be there in their 4th, and it's mad. Yeah.
I feel like once you get involved with RAG, you're there for the long haul.
That's a mood, honestly. It's.
Yeah. I was in it for 4 years, so don't you worry, I understand. But if we have no more questions, just huge thank you to Scott for sharing all this with everyone who's participated. Thank you so much to everyone who's obviously tuned in. And obviously we'll be sharing this as of things next week. We'll be sharing all the presentations, so you can tune in again, anything you want to catch up on. But yeah, we'll see you over in the coffee shop. See you later.
Thanks so much for coming.
Well done.
Thanks, Scott. That was great.
No worries at all. That has stopped broadcasting.
I'm going to end the